Paul, you were listening. You've been listening to all of it. I don't think you've moved a muscle here today. What between the two speeches, what's most telling to you about where this presidency is going now?
I moved a muscle, Adrian, simply to look over your shoulder. You won't be able to see it now, but I guess it's not, technically speaking, Air Force One anymore.
Special air mission.
Special air mission. You can't see it. He's just gone out of sight. Biden heading off to the rest of his time. Man, when I was listening to Donald Trump there, I thought, deja vu all over again. Here we go, right? I mean, it's picking up where he left off almost 4 years ago. If you combine the two speeches, I thought, the one at the inaugural address and the one that was just happening now, put them together and you have a Trump rally, right? You have one of substance and one of the messaging that he wants to get out there. And I think Tia was right. He was quite disciplined. He stuck to script, for the most part. And then the second one was when he goes off on tangents that matter to him, says things he wants to say. Besides going on with about the situation in Texas and the border wall, talking about the January 6th people, which
who he refers to as hostages.
Hostages is the word that he used. You're right. Which I guess is now certainly he's going to sign an executive order on that. I think it's going to be at the Capitol One. And also we heard from him his thoughts on Joe Biden's pardons of his family members today and others, or preemptive pardons rather. He ain't happy about that. I think we can deduce, right? And he's, he's talking about picking up where we left off, and he's talking about, crying lunatic Liz Cheney and taking a punch at Mark Milley, his former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, things like that, as Trump critics would label going down his list of grievances. So here we are again. I mean, it's sort of like, I was thinking it's like COVID. You know how COVID kind of took a chunk out of our lives? The absence of Trump, it's like that never happened. And we're, picking up where he left off. But it is clear again, every time he has said anything today, that he, wants to get down to business. Tia was talking about how it wasn't the kind of inaugural address that we typically hear, the grandiose visions for this and the big, thoughts and dreams. Instead, it was, here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And again, I got 4 years. I'm going to get down to business today. A whack of executive orders. We're going to do it.
Right. As if the Biden presidency was a speed bump.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Good analogy.
So while you're talking here, I just want to show some folks some tape of Prime Minister Trudeau. Remember Canada. That's why we're here, outside the cabinet retreat in Montebello, Quebec. He just happened by our cameras briefly. Let's have a little listen to what he said.
He is a rock star who is happy to be here in Montebello today to dig in on issues facing Canadians here at this cabinet retreat.
Pas de tarif pour l'instant. Comment? Pas de tarif.
Pour l'instant.
Avez-vous des craintes sur l'immigration?
Okay. That's it. That's all. Not much there to listen to, but someone who has certainly better sources than just a camera sitting in a hallway is Rosie Barton. So, Rosie, what more can you tell us about how this day has unfolding for the cabinet retreat?
Yeah, I would just say it was the tail end there in French that was actually the important piece, where our colleague Laurence Martin said no tariffs for now, and the Prime Minister said yes for now. And that is very much where their heads are at right now. No one's going to be popping champagne at Montebello tonight in the cabinet. This remains, I think, first of all, a cautious approach to the issue of tariffs, which, from what we understand, aren't going to happen today. But some of what we saw in the reporting from the Wall Street Journal, and it would be great if we could get access to this memo too. I don't know if that's something that will be public later. But the memo around trade makes it very clear that Donald Trump wants to look at trade imbalances, trade problems, and in that same memo talks about remedies. Well, for Donald Trump, a remedy to a trade problem is a tariff. So, I think there's a certain amount of good news here for the country and relief. But as the Prime Minister rightly said, and that's what you will hear later from cabinet ministers too, is this is a temporary reprieve. And it certainly also means that Canada can't take its foot off the gas. We're going to hear from Doug Ford shortly, the Premier of Ontario, who has spent millions and millions of dollars advertising in the United States over the past couple of months to try and prevent this from happening. This morning, he said if tariffs went in place today, he would order the LCBO, the liquor board here in Ontario, to wipe the shelves of American booze. So there are really serious consequences to this not happening, but I don't think it means that anyone can look away. And that kind of goes back to what Paul was saying. When the Trudeau government had to face the first Trump administration, it was like nobody could ever sleep at night who was in charge of government. You would wake up and there would be something on Twitter, on X, that they would have to respond to, both politically and in a policy front. So, yeah, no tariffs for now, but definitely a real need for Canada to remain solely focused on this issue.
No tariffs, but no sleep. I think that's probably a good strategy. I can tell you certainly here at the embassy, Rosie, which is a collection of some 300 people who are, people Canada interacts with daily. They're members of staff of various governors of states that are important to Canada, but also congressional staff are here. There's some American elected officials, Canadian elected officials. They have not stopped talking at all. Maintaining that relationship is everything to maintaining a good trade relationship. So that's going to continue. There's also a tailgate party on the ground floor here at the embassy. This is all part of the tradition of Canada's embassy here. So thank you for that, Rosie. On the right side of the screen, as you see a young, very tall Barron Trump there and the rest of the Trump family, they're at the luncheon, this traditional luncheon. As always, they send out a menu. It's the sort of thing that happens at royal events as well. So what are they having? Chesapeake crab cakes, Greater Omaha Angus steaks, wine from Monticello, and Napa Valley. So we also saw Bernie Sanders there, Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State. That is someone who will certainly be spending time connecting with Canadians.
Just picking up on what Rosie was talking about there. Here's the thing, and there are smarter people than I that would have better insight than this, I imagine. But with Trump and negotiating and things like with tariffs, I think the thing is you just don't know whether he's just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks and what doesn't, or whether that is the whole idea. That's arguably a great tactic, because if some of that works, some of it sticks, then that's a win, right? And I don't know that anybody who negotiates in that way would ever let on that they were just sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see, and that it is a continuing process. I'll get what I get this time. The talks will continue in back rooms and in front rooms, and will nudge things along. I mean, with Trump, I think one thing you can take to the bank, back to the transactional nature of him, is that I will always push. I will always take, and I won't give a centimeter, in any negotiation, unless I can somehow justify it that it is, in fact, a win for me, i.e. Trump.
But I suppose that's what makes, in this era, The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's book, not a business book, but a political book. Because there's a political manual for this era, possibly, because there's a whole chapter in it about how one very important strategy in business is to take something that was never on the table, that was a decided matter, and suddenly raise it from the dead again as an open, active file, and poke at that as a way of using it as leverage to get something else.
And at the same time, throw out other stuff, right? 51st state. Right. Going to take Greenland. There's a word that wasn't mentioned today by him anyway. Put all these things out there and see, and I'll take that.
That's right. So you don't. In the end, you don't get that, but you get those other things that you really wanted at the beginning.
That you knew all along.
That's right. Art of the Deal.
Art of the Deal.
Maybe time to read it again. All right, let's go to Katie Simpson, who always has an excellent vantage point and always excellent analysis. Where are you, Katie? What are you thinking?
Well, we are in our little spot here up at the Senate office side of Capitol Hill, and everyone is now waiting to see when Donald Trump is going to sit down and start signing those executive orders and what exactly details we'll learn about how quickly he's going to implement his agenda. As we've been talking about, he really gave a nod to it in his speech today, going specifically through the details of what the changes he'd like to see, sounding a lot like a campaign speech. A recent interview by Steve Bannon, who's a former Trump advisor in the White House in his first term. He's not formally advising Trump at this point, but he is still deeply involved in that world, in the MAGA movement, the Make America Great Again movement. And he described 2016 as saying, listen, those days were shock and awe. They were coming into office and trying to be disruptors, bring about the change that Donald Trump wanted to enact. If 2016 was shock and awe, he describes this moment as days of thunder. Donald Trump has the experience. He's surrounding himself with people who believe in his mission, believe in his vision, and they are coming in on the first day ready to execute that vision. And so that is why there is going to be so much attention paid to these executive orders. We know that it's going to be detailing his plan to secure the southern border, declaring a national emergency along the southern border. Are we going to get additional details about how he's going to be going about executing his mass deportation plan? When you speak with Donald Trump's supporters, we spent the day yesterday sort of in and around the lineup heading into the Capital One Center for his pre-inauguration victory rally. And when I asked people there, is there one issue that really sort of solidified your support for Donald Trump? And most often, the issue that came up was immigration. So that is a core promise that Donald Trump made over and over and over again throughout the election campaign process that he is looking to deliver on today. Of course, through the Canadian perspective, what does that mean for Canada? Should there be mass deportation orders in the United States? What could that do if there are shifting migration patterns, whatever that could mean? Of course, Canada is watching that very, very closely. And then there is the whole tariff situation. Donald Trump did mention tariffs in his speech today, in his inaugural address, about how he hopes to use them to help generate wealth in the United States. The thing to remember is tariffs, when they are applied to a product, it's the business that's importing the foreign good that pays it. And more often than not, that tariff is then shared along to the consumer. Some of the senior Trump officials that are going through the confirmation process, they see things very, very differently. Scott Bessent, who is on his path to be confirmed to be the Treasury Secretary, he talked about how they see tariffs as a way to sort of change markets, that, it could change spending habits, that Americans look for more domestically manufactured products, and that's a good thing. He also thought that if tariffs were imposed on Chinese goods, that the Chinese would continue to lower their prices to ensure that they could maintain, a share of access to this massive American market, this very valuable American market. Those are that's the viewpoint that is coming from the Trump administration and these incoming members, these people who are going through the confirmation process. So that's how they view tariffs. The Canadian government obviously has a very, very different, and many economists have a very different view of what's going on there. But again, we are expecting some sort of tariffs according to several U.S. networks, several executive orders around possibly studying tariffs. Nothing exactly today, but again, those are the kinds of things that Donald Trump will be looking at today in terms of those executive orders. There had been some reporting that there could be some signed at the Capitol, could be some signed at the Capital One Arena where he's going to hold his parade, and then there could be some signed at the White House as well. If there are multiple signing events, it would demonstrate to Donald Trump's supporters and demonstrate to Americans that he is returning to office, ready to get things done, ready to do things on day one, and again, to deliver on those promises that he's essentially been making to American voters, shortly after he left office back in 2021.
Indeed. I think you're looking at executive orders that will do two things. One, bring new things into reality and undo other things. So I think it's possible. We've heard anywhere from 100 to 200 orders. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Certainly TikTok might be on that list. That's a popular one that might happen at Capital One. He certainly wants to sign an order in front of that crowd of people that's going to make them happy. He certainly teased enough that something's going to happen with perhaps as many as 1,500 people who were charged in the January 6th attack. Katie Simpson, thank you very much. We are, again, looking at the pictures from the luncheon. You just saw Donald Trump Jr. there. We've seen Ivanka Trump, members of that large family mingling there. We know that you saw Pete Hegseth there, for example, who's a nominee for Secretary of Defense. He was at a ball last night. Marco Rubio was there. We understand that Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, ended up speaking with both of them at a ball. We've seen pictures of her also with Rick Scott. She's certainly trying to fly a flag for Canada or Alberta. Here in Washington. There are a number of other premiers here.